All right, looks like we are live. I have to trust the computer, right?
That's
You
right.
see the same thing I'm seeing, more or less. All right, welcome everyone. Good morning. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I am Don Irvine. I'm joined by Brian McNicoll.
Good morning, deplorables, despicables, drags, and dog-faced phony soldiers.
Yeah, don't even need a teleprompter anymore for that.
These
All
are
right.
our friends.
All right. Actually, I want to start off just kind of because we're just coming off of Labor Day and a couple other things, and then we'll go into some of the more meatier matters. So, here we are roughly, 5.5, 6 months, depends on when you want to start your calendar, into this whole, coronavirus COVID experience. And we have gone through yet another holiday weekend. I mean, we had, I guess, big holiday weekends would have been, say, Memorial Day, July 4th, and now Labor Day, probably the three big kind of summerish holidays. None of these holidays really felt the same. This had the opportunity of getting closer to that because we're kind of coming out of that. But still, I think a lot of people did not go on vacation or didn't take advantage of it. I mean, I don't think we saw the beaches necessarily being super packed or whatever. It's somewhere in between. I don't know what you saw. I just kind of want to get your feeling about how did you feel about this whole Labor Day weekend? It's kind of like the traditional end of summer, but I kind of felt like meh. I don't know.
I thought that in terms of disrupting a holiday, that the 4th of July was more disrupted, right? Because we sort of have a ritual on the 4th of July that requires us to all get in one place and watch fireworks and share food and all kind of things you kind of can't do now. And I really felt like the 4th of July did not look at all like it. We've grown accustomed to it looking. Labor Day, it's usually go to the pool or go to the lake and eat barbecue and whatnot. And my Labor Day looked similar to past Labor Days. Now, couple of things we've always kind of found time for, on this weekend is one, it's Labor Day weekend is the end of the minor league baseball season. So I've spent a lot of those weekends, whoever our local teams were that were close to a playoff spot, watching them, can they make it to the playoffs or whatever, also that, it's the start of high school football and, it's kind of all the kids get back on campus and see each other for the first time. A lot of times there's a game, the first game is before their school even starts. So it really is a big reunion of the students of the school, and it's a supercharged to like school spirit and getting everybody involved and sort of pulling the same rope, on behalf of the school or whatever. That's gone. And another thing that happens around DC over Labor Day weekend is a lot of terrific music festivals, jazz festivals, and so forth. All that wiped away. So, the big stuff that I go out for on Labor Day was all canceled. So it was a typical Labor Day if you're going to stay home for Labor Day, so to speak.
Just like me.
Yeah, something lost in these things, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're essentially giving a year to this thing, right? You were talking about the start date. To me, the start date is March 13th. That's when everything closed. The kids were sent home from school, and the nation kind of ground to a halt. I remember the Sunday before I got a haircut because you could read in the paper, you could see this was coming, right? And the person there was a person, another hairstylist there who wasn't doing my hair. And I was talking to my hairstylist, and I'm like, yeah, this is getting serious. It looks like they're gonna cut out, businesses like this. You could be closed for months. And like this other hairstylist turns like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's time to get caught up, lady. And sure enough, that place where we were is closed. They're gone forever. No one ever going to get a haircut there again.
So they're I mean, they've totally shut down. That's it.
Yeah, it's clear. They're all out of business. So, it's a sad thing. And now, it looks like a pretty significant overreaction.
All right. The other part of this was that this has, depending upon when Labor Day falls, sometimes it falls a little bit early. This was what, the 7th?
It's the latest it can possibly be.
Yeah. Yeah, so normally when we've seen schools start right after that in most areas. School is very different across the region compared to what it used to be because everybody's adopted different models or how they want to schedule things. And that's, we used to see even with a late Labor Day, sometimes school systems would start beforehand because they didn't want to lose that much time. They thought, the 7th was too late. The 2nd or the 3rd is one thing, but when you get past like the 5th, they start getting, I think, a little bit like we got to get the school started.
Right. You start squeezing to get that 190 days in and so forth.
Right. So now I see, on Facebook, so your kids have now started the online. So they kind of now, I think yesterday was probably, or this week was probably the final kind of jurisdictions. It seemed like we saw a lot more of the jurisdictions finally rolling that out and going that. So your kids are now at home doing the online learning model. What I thought was interesting about this, I was surprised because we had some friends of ours, and she posted pictures on Facebook, and she lives here in Montgomery County, and she has 2 kids left in school, and high school age, or I guess middle school, high school. She's actually done something I never thought she would do, and she never thought she would do, which is that she's gone the homeschooling route. My wife was telling me some other people that we know have also gone that route. I'm beginning to wonder whether or not you have any inkling whether or not that's happening in your part of Virginia, but it really didn't even occur to me that these people would even go to that link. I thought they were just going to trudge through the public school system, but they finally said, no, we don't like this model of online learning, that tying up on the kids on the computers. We want to have something a little more flexible that make for us now, since we're going to be doing home anyway.
I read, and somebody asked me to cite my sources. I can't do it because I don't remember where I read this, but I read that you have to apply to do homeschooling in Virginia, and the applications were up. The people requesting applications was up 3,200% this year.
What?
So, that's a lot of people interested in it. Yeah. I don't know how many people followed through. I think people were, sort of waiting to see what the school system came up with, because it was kind of a scratchy start, back in the spring.
Yeah.
And, I don't know how many people said, this is still unacceptable to me. But it's been real interesting. And like, we can hear the teachers talking to the kids. I guess there are school systems that are asking you as parents not to listen to the lesson. And it's like, excuse me, no. But it's a constant debrief, that's wherever you go to school and however the message is delivered. My daughter was asked, yesterday in one of her classes to name the political issues that are important to you. And she's like, what do I say? Because she already has enough, some evidence this teacher's left leaning. Because what do I say that doesn't get me in trouble? So, it's like she's gaming this out because like she's afraid to say what she really thinks. And kids shouldn't be like that. Teachers should not be putting them in that position.
Yeah, look, on the listening in part, I'm sorry. This is public education.
That's
you
right.
are paying for this with your tax dollars, right?
Yeah, what are you ashamed of?
Yeah, exactly. What is it? Yeah, it's like it was fine for us to teach your kids and inculcate them with our philosophy and whatever, while we only had them on a one-on-one situation, something like that. But heaven forbid should the parents actually find out what we're teaching in class,
right.
And expose that. So this is one of the reasons I want to bring this up, because I only got this morning. And it came from one of our activists in Montgomery County. And somebody had sent this to her. And it was from a vice principal at an elementary school in Montgomery County. So one of the things that they sent, an email that they sent out to the parents, social emotional learning was one of the subjects. There was one on attendance, but this was the other one. Between September 9th and 18th, all students will be receiving a psychoeducational lesson as part of the MCPS Be Well 365 initiative. Our school counselors, Ms. Gillespie and Ms. Strauss, as well as our school psychologist, Ms. Macaria, will be leading these discussions in conjunction with the classroom teachers. The lessons will be a springboard into a variety of topics which will be discussed further this year, including coronavirus, social justice and racism, recognizing feelings and emotions, coping with emotions, and accessing trusted adults. These lessons will not be recorded live, but recordings of the content will be available in the module section of the school counseling pages on Canvas. If you have any questions about these lessons, please reach out to your child's grade school counselor. And I'm thinking like, Whoa, what?
Okay, so first of all, could you go back and read again? What are the titles of these three people?
It is the well, there's the counselors as the and the school psychologist
There's two counselors in the
and one
school psychologist.
psychologist. Yeah,
Okay, so that's three. No, it's possible they share a psychologist. It could be she has two or three schools under
that's
her.
possible. Right, it would
That's
make
a
sense.
common sort of
Yeah,
model.
yeah.
So you're talking about three employees there making at least 80,000 a year, because that's a specialized thing. That's not just a starting teacher salary. You know, the school psychologist probably six figures. Uh, you know, none of those guys are darkening the door of a classroom, right? They're not teaching your kid anything. And now I guess they have a little thing they want to teach them about, you know, political stuff, right? So that's, you know, you think about like when you're Montgomery County and you're like, what happens to all this money? That's part of what happens. So Montgomery County has more employees making over $100,000 than any school system in the world. And, you know, I mean, that's just, it's very top heavy. And that's part of the Montgomery County model is to, you know, have this huge public workforce and pay them exorbitantly. And, hey, we have a rich county. It's like, okay, as long as people keep paying the taxes, but it's a Ponzi scheme, and you pull one thing out and it all falls apart. But, you know, that's three people, three big salaries, not devoted to learning, but devoted to, you know, political indoctrination, you know, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it is.
In elementary school. So this goes along with a segment I saw on WRC, Channel 4 News last week when I was in the gym. And there's a teacher, an elementary school teacher in Prince William County. And she's now like a certified literary specialist or whatever now in the county. But she has a program where she's created a wish list. And apparently it's gone very well since she got publicized that people are contributing money and buying her all these books on the wish list. But she went through like the schools, her school's books for all the elementary school kids, and she is now putting into those things books that have come out for, you know, these 7, 8, 9-year-olds, whatever, on racism, social justice, diversity, LGBTQIA. So that's all going into the school system, you know, in Prince William County. I mean, this is this. You know, we didn't have to worry about this 25 years ago, really. But now, I mean, now it's really coming full circle where a lot of these political activist types or these other people are now thinking, you know, we need, in order to breed, to get those, 18, 19, 20-year-old activists, or even the high school kid activists, we've got to get, you know, we're going to start teaching them when they're 7 years old and feeding them this stuff, right?
Right. It's comprehensive. It's, you know, both my kids, one in high school, one in middle school, have heard that, you know, awareness of racism is going to be part of your curriculum. Like the school system has said, hey, we need to deal with that this year. You know, we need to talk about that this year. And, you know, I think that if you let those kids handle it themselves, you know, you'll get a better result, you know, because it's not like if you go walk around the school, right? Because I go up there, I speak in the school 2 or 3 times a year and stuff like that. You know, the kids, racism is not a problem for the kids, right? The kids, like, you know, my son, anybody who's willing to play football, basketball, and baseball all day is his friend, right? It doesn't matter what you look like. If you are, you know, he's trying to get an even number of fair teams, right? And if you'll help him do that, you're his friend. He doesn't care who you are, right? And so, you know, if we sit down and say, you know, we slice and dice this like that, is it, you know, who has helped? How has it benefit to sit and have a discussion over something that the kids are not doing, right? They don't do it. They don't exclude each other on the basis of race. They form their friendships based on, you know, common likes. You know, I'm sure the kids who, you know, read books and go to symphony concerts, they're all a group, right? I mean, it's a different group, but they're all a group. And, you know, I think that we, you know, spending a lot of time on this can actually even make it worse. You know, I don't think, I just question the resources going into this when there's so much more kids need to, you know, like you could see in the political debate that, you know, hey, why don't we teach civics, right? You know, because like, for instance, the thing I see all the time. Why doesn't Trump have a plan for COVID? Where's his plan, right? That's one of the things the Democrats are always saying. Where's his plan? Okay, what would be in the plan, right? Things that don't, a bunch of things that don't, either things he's already doing, like, getting corporations to build and make the things we needed to fight it, right? And when the pressure was really on, the rest of what they're suggesting violates the 10th Amendment. You can't. Biden comes in talking about a national mask mandate. You don't have the power to do that. And then like, okay, well, we'll really urge the states. We won't make them. Okay, gotcha, right? But you should have said that up front, because now everybody thinks that the president can make all the states institute a mask mandate, and that he should. Okay, and both of which are questionable, to say the least, premises, right? But no one knows how anything works anymore, because we're pat each other on the back over racism classes, but we are not covering civics. We don't teach like how bills are passed and what the Constitution means.
Yeah, no, it's just, and you're right. I mean, the thing is that if you just asked, a bunch of elementary school kids, or even middle school kids for the most part, about these kind of issues, they just want to be kids. They just want to do their thing. They want to read their books. They want to play their sports, or do whatever, play their video games, play Fortnite or whatever. This is not part of the thing. This is the educational system and these liberal educators trying to force them into this thing. They want to develop the next generation of social justice warriors. But, there's no way my grandson in Indiana could, he doesn't look at the color of anybody's skin. He just wants to be a kid.
Right. You have to teach people to be racist.
Yeah.
We're not born racist. We're born
Right,
getting along with everybody.
Well, that's it. Right. Exactly. I mean, that actually is part, it almost seems that it is part of the liberal, that narrative is that, you're born racist, so we have to teach you how to not be racist or something.
Right. It's just the opposite. It's like, if you just shut up about it, it'll get worked out. Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, to separate this out now, to be clear, if things that come from the government, the law enforcement, provision of services such as education, right, are being done unfairly, one side's getting a better shake than the other, that's something all Americans should work together to fix, right? Police should be treating everyone the same. I'm sure you agree with that.
Yeah.
Police should not be regarding, when they stop black people, it's any more likely to be a personal danger to them than white people, right? But that's not, what happened. So to me, it's like, you want to fix this. That's where, and I'm not blaming the police. I'm saying, figure out what that is and address that, okay? Because that's where the rubber meets the road on this. The, teaching kids, that, first of all, think of yourself as a black person, a Hispanic person, a white person, okay? Don't just think of yourself as a kid, like my son who wants to play football, basketball, baseball all day. Think of your kid as being in this group as opposed to this other group. Hey, now you groups don't oppose each other, okay? Why are you telling them to be part of a group? They're individuals, and they see themselves as individuals, and that's how they will act unless some adult comes along and intervenes.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's okay. So, all right, we'll put this aside. That was a lot longer than I expected, but it was a good discussion, I think, on this. It's something that we have to remind people of what's going on here. And maybe this is, maybe there is some silver lining to a certain aspect of the whole COVID thing, because with the number of people that are thinking about maybe homeschooling their kids, they'll have a better chance to control and kind of maybe try to reverse some of the things that the kids have been taught to a certain extent.
Right, and I think you'll see some innovations. I think homeschooling will get better overall as a result of this, because you're going to have a lot more people trying to do it and trying to improve on what's there. Yeah,
look, I mean, I'm going to say this. I mean, even my church apparently has come out as this has gone on. They came out, I guess they have created some kind of curriculum that can be used by church members to teach their kids, should that's what they want to do, which is interesting to me, because there has been a clamoring for decades about why doesn't the church have, like the Catholics do? Why don't they have these schools that they're good? Well, the church
Right. I
didn't
was
want
going to
to.
say my church is opening schools.
Yeah, but our mind didn't want to get into all of that because they just saw how it was all the things that had to be done with that, and it was enough that they're running higher education institutions. But I think this is almost the perfect thing now, is that create give them some curriculum guidelines and hand this off and say, it's up to you as parents and whatever to teach your kids if you want to teach them this as an alternative to sending them to public schools and doing the online class. So
Right.
it's kind of the homeschooling model with that fits a religious model of some sort. I haven't looked at the curriculum, so I don't know what's in there, but I think some people are using it now, which is an interesting thing to me. All right, you mentioned a little bit about the president and the COVID policy and things like that. So there seems to be a little bit of a disagreement on Biden and Trump on terms of the COVID policy and who's doing what. Now, a lot of this is campaign rhetoric, particularly from Joe Biden. The stuff that I keep seeing, just keeps making me want to scratch my head. It's like, you're really attacking him over nothing or things that where you're really wrong on. If people are actually believing, if they're actually buying into this campaign language, they're really kind of dumb. But I mean, where are we going with this? Who's right? Who's wrong? We also had the AstraZeneca put a pause on their trials, but it is not unusual because these when you're doing these trials, they're never going to be perfect. There's always, something will happen. You got to stop to see what's going on here with somebody getting ill, find out what it is, and then you can resume. But there's so many different trials going on. It's not really, it's a drop in the bucket to the whole bigger thing.
Right. And the Russians say they have one that works.
Right.
And they're using it, and it hasn't failed anyone yet. So, I mean, a bunch of people in this country poo-pooed it when that news came out, but looking back a couple of weeks now, it doesn't appear that they're having bad results with it. So it's not impossible that the Russians, could develop one.
Let me ask you this: Has Trump jumped the gun or politicized it too much by saying there'll be a vaccine, in a couple of months, versus where other experts, and I may have to use air quotes for that, have said end of the year or next year, is more likely? What's your feeling about this?
I think that he's giving dates that people are giving to him, and there's some people who should be ready in October for this. I really don't think it matters whether it hits the last week of October or the second week of November. If we're at that point and people say, hey, it's imminent that we're going to have a vaccine, I think that's enough, other than, as opposed to, we have, the first 100 people to have taken the vaccine. Will that make a big difference to many voters on November 3rd? I don't think so. So I don't think it's being politicized. I think, I don't think Trump thinks like that. I think that, people, he got in trouble early in this, right, when he said, there'll be 15 people and we think we can get the one guy well and the others seem like they're okay. And, there were 3 or 4 things there where early on where he said, we think we can limit this. Well, the reason he was saying that is, Biden's always like, we have to listen to the scientists. He listened to the scientists and they said, yes, right now it looks like we have it contained to X, right? And it turned out we didn't. And, when you were watching that, you kind of knew, right? They don't really know where this is. And there's so many people traveling now between the United States and China, between the United States and Europe, between Europe and China, that, containing this in China was always going to be sort of a far-fetched proposition. But, when you say, people say, Trump lies about everything. Okay, what does he lie about? One of the most common ones that comes up is, the flatten the curve, the things he said at the outset of this, that he thought it could be contained, right? Now he's busy responding. You say, separate what he said from what he did. He had the genome, we got the first map of the genome published in the United States, January 11th, January 12th, we started the vaccine team. By the end of January, we had stopped travel from China and, named, vetted, stood up, agendized, and announced the task force, right? I mean, they hit the ground running. They were working before they ever met. So, Trump was all over this in January, saying this was a big problem. People were giving him hope by saying, we may have this contained. It may not be that big a deal. He never treated it as not a big deal. but he did pass along some of those hopeful projections on it. So, and now we're to the point where, they're having, the Kamala especially, but both of them are saying, we will not necessarily trust a vaccine that comes out during the Trump administration. Like, he's off saying, just rush something to market that might kill people to help my political chances, right? I mean, who believes, even if you hate Trump, how can you believe that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're right about that. I mean, it just that's the whole thing. But there are a lot of people out there, a lot of my friends who are just like, if Biden wins the election, they're expecting that the media and others will all of a sudden, their tune will dramatically change on the handling of the coronavirus. And all of a sudden, they won't be paying as much attention to the numbers and things like that until things get very favorable. Or they'll just downplay things and manipulate things to make a Biden administration look so much better, like he's totally reversed, all the ills or whatever you want to say about the Trump administration.
Right, and the numbers themselves have become suspect, to say the least, right? It looks like there's about 9,300 people who actually died of coronavirus, as opposed to dying with it. Not 190,000. They add 1,000 a day to that count, regardless of how many reports of deaths they have. Did you know that? They just pile 1,000 on every day, regardless of whether 1,000 people died. I mean, it's ridiculous, and you go on Facebook or whatever, and I see people all the time. I don't know a single person who has even had COVID. And I'm like, well, you do know one, I'm sorry to disappoint you.
Yeah.
But, so you can't believe the numbers. And so if Biden were to win, they would, it turns out only 140,000 died. 50,000 have come back to life thanks to Biden, So, I mean, get ready for utter media ridiculosity.
Right. And that CDC, thing that we talked about before, I mean, that story basically went nowhere, as far as I could tell. Right. I mean, right. I mean, we talked about it. Conservatives might talk about it, but boy, I mean, as far as the liberal media, it was, they may have dropped it in somewhere, but there was no explanation, basically. Normally something like this, I mean, if this, if this was a Democrat, if this had been, if Obama or Biden had been the president and this report had come out, they'd be like, hey, look, and they'd be talking about this, and they, they said, well, look, it's really not as bad as, you think it is. But, that doesn't serve their purpose, right, during this election phase. So it's, right. This story has really died. And it's really a shame, because people have to understand, the context. I keep saying there's no contextualization, with a lot of these reports by the media on this at all.
Right. So, and you still have, to this day, only about 5,000 people in the whole country, 44 and younger, have died of this. And that's even using the pre-CDC definition of, dying with as opposed to of COVID, right? You still have more than half the people are 85 or older. The median age of a COVID death victim in Florida is 93.4. Okay. More than 2/3 are 75 or older. So, if you're below 75, there's really very little risk to you, whether you wear a mask or go to school or play ball or what.
Right.
It's just not, the science does not support what we're doing to the country now in the name of trying to get Joe Biden elected.
All right, moving on. News or fake news or somewhere in between. And this is the whole thing about President Trump and the Atlantic and their report that he had called the military troops, people who died, losers and suckers and things like that. There's been a lot of blowback from that. A lot of other things have been coming out since then. The media went after this full bore. The Democrats went after this full bore. Joe Biden went after this. What's your take on this?
So he is alleged to have called World War I soldiers losers and suckers. Right? He doesn't know what World War I soldiers were like. Right? He wasn't, as old as he is. He's not that old. There are 21 people on the record saying this is not true. And most of them say, I mean, John Bolton, who's no friend of the president's, right? He says he never said that while I was around. He never disparaged the troops in any way while I was around. So you go on Twitter and they're like, well, he said when he was around. Well, how can he say what Trump said when he wasn't around? Because he didn't hear it, right? If you're not around, you didn't hear it, okay? So, I mean, it's like, that's not an objection, okay? Yeah. And then you have this spectacle of this woman from Fox saying she confirmed it. It's like, who'd you confirm it with? Well, that's anonymous. The same people called you who called them, right? What is your proof that they didn't, and that any of these people are in position to know any of this? So one thing we're learning is it's another thing, people don't know how anything works anymore. There is how journalism works, okay? So, and people will come at me and they'll say, Watergate was all anonymous source. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. Nothing Deep Throat said ended up in the Washington Post. Deep Throat told the reporters stuff. The reporters then went and got the documents that proved it, and on the record corroboration of what they had been told from people who put their names with the story, okay? And if you watch the movie, there are two famous scenes in the movie where Ben Bradley doesn't let Woodward and Bernstein run stuff because they don't have it documented by on-the-record people. So they didn't do anonymous source drive-by journalism like this. They did not do it. What they did is completely different. So these guys, basically, they've made up a story. Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor of The Atlantic, is a ravenous Trump hater and always has been. The owner of The Atlantic is Steve Jobs' widow, who is a mega donor to the Biden campaign. And, they say 4 witnesses, but you don't know. There's nothing that delineates in the story, witness 1 said this, witness 2 said that, right? It's just, we got this general drift from these 4 people, and, that's our story. And, we stand by it. Well, what are you going to do? Okay. Right. We know you can't prove it false either because you don't know who said it. Okay. But what you do have is 21 people who were there. 8 of them directly involved in the conversations described, saying that's not what happened. So this is the thing, is like, are you just going to believe pie in the sky stuff, or do you have any demand that the media sources pitching stuff, have any documentation of it? That this is happening in an election year, in an election season, is doubly remarkable. How can a publication put itself in this position? Because if Trump, it's hard to sue a publication because you have to prove that they knew it was false and did it to you maliciously, that they did it to you to hurt you, but are we saying Trump could not establish those things? Because, I think he probably could.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, even people who are not very favorable towards Trump, I mean, kind of like the idea that even Trump, as many wild statements that he makes over time, to disparage our veterans, to disparage anybody. I mean, he has been a very good supporter of the military and the troops, since during his presidency, and that just seems that it would be extremely unlikely with this. But yeah, as you mentioned, when you said, when I saw that John Bolton had come out to defend him, I'm like, see, now that's saying something to me. I mean, I think there was also someone who had worked with John Kelly.
Right. Kelly's assistant said the same thing. So, they were there. They were, both of them were in the room. Sarah Huckabee Sanders was in the room, right? So they have 8 people who were in the room saying that's not what he said. And quite a few of them went beyond that to say, I've never heard Trump say anything negative like that about the military, right? And so the argument is, right, and you have to think about the Democrat mind, right? Democrat mind, there are no individuals. We're all just members of groups, right? And you can hold us responsible for group behavior, right, and so forth, right? They say, you say Trump's never criticized the military like, oh, he criticized John McCain. Hey, he criticized John McCain decades after John McCain got out of the military, and not for anything to do with the military, right? He said his thing about the POWs. I like POWs better, people better who don't get caught, right? Okay, that was a shot at McCain. That's not a shot at the military. Same with, Kaiser Khan, took him on politically. Is he just take that lying down and just don't even answer those charges? What would they have had Trump do? Right. Who was the other one? Oh, Vindman. Then they want to come out and say, well, we shouldn't have criticized Vindman. Vindman was trying to help execute a coup against him. Is he supposed to wrap that guy in a big hug? This is nuts. It's like, but these are individuals who did individual things that brought individual complaints from Trump. He's not criticizing the military as a group. And the military knows this, right? Because they knew this instinctively. And you have to separate the rank and file from the brass, because the brass were thoroughly replaced with people devoted to Obama, right? He knocked off all the generals and put in generals that he trusted. Okay, so the people running the services right now are Obama fans in the main. Okay, but when Trump became president, when Obama became president, they had to round up people to serve on his Secret Service and military and White House detail. When Trump became president, 23,000 people signed up for that duty. So, a few more, the rank and file of the military, they know what they see in Trump. He sneaks over to visit them in the holidays. He sneaks up to Dover. He doesn't get any credit for that. No one even knows he's there except those families, right? To meet those planes with those, those are horrible, gut-wrenching scenes. Those families greeting those flag-colored caskets and stuff, and he's there for that. Biden when's the last time Biden went? Right, he lives right by it. That's right near the basement.
Get out of your basement and do that. Yeah. Plus, we had, I think it was Breonna Keeler from CNN. I mean, you mentioned Sanders. In that. She's come out and said, she says, well, Sanders' word doesn't mean anything. I mean, look, Breonna Keeler, you weren't there.
Right.
Right. So,
right. I mean, you're just going to pick on, okay, what about the other 7 eyewitnesses? Can you disqualify them all? And if you can, I think that says more about you than them. Right.
Yeah, it's one thing to criticize Sarah Sanders if she's the only person defending the president or whatever. She might be open, but I mean, she's not the only one. So it's kind of so then do you, if Sanders says this, do you then say the other people are also, you can't trust them either? Right. But the media, a lot of the media, they love John Bolton because he's not been favorable towards Trump. So they box themselves into these corners, I think, when they do this stuff.
Right.
All right. So one of the things that Biden said I guess it was on Monday, playing for that labor vote, that he was basically going to be the strongest, labor president ever. And everything like that. I mean, he really wants the big push on labor, but labor unions, they've been in decline for decades. A lot of people don't want to join labor unions. Is he out to eventually kill right to work laws? Is he trying to return us to a heavily labor, unionized workforce? I mean, what's the deal here?
Well, I mean, he is saying what he has to say because unions are endorsing Trump, right? Police Union of Chicago yesterday endorsed Trump. Police unions of several national police unions have endorsed Trump. Police Union of New York has endorsed Trump. Unions, even public sector unions, are saying, he has our interest at heart, and the other people don't. The big unions in the Midwest, the big steel workers and so forth. You haven't heard from them yet. Why? Because they don't have the support of their members to do their traditional thing and endorse the Democrat, right? The rank and file is not for it. Trump has busted through the union wall. So I think that Biden's comments were an attempt to play catch up.
That's an interesting observation. I hadn't really thought about that because, we're 55 days away from the election, and he's lacking still some major labor union endorsements that Democrats would traditionally have received. Yeah, what is holding them back? That's actually a really good observation, I think, on that. I don't know, man. Yeah, I think it is playing to the audience, to the base that he needs. I just don't know how much of that base is that people are there anymore. I don't know that the workforce is the same that it was, 30, 40 years ago anymore like that.
Right.
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 Okay.
And a lot of those guys voted for Trump in 2016, and they haven't really seen a lot to change their minds. Kirk
Right.
Schlichter on Twitter keeps asking, has anyone changed from Trump to Biden? Has anyone said, I can't take Trump anymore, I'm going to Biden? And he keeps looking for people, and no one really steps up. So
I did see somebody that was on Twitter or Facebook, but it was like the first one I'd seen, and so you can have a few, and I think there's probably still some Democrats that voted for Hillary that will still wind up voting for, that will probably they'll look at the difference between Trump and Biden and then vote for Trump. So it's, we don't know where we're going with this exactly.
Yeah, Biden's not well. And what's emerging is the big issue in this election is, the riots. And if Democrats could stop the riots or had any interest in stopping the riots, they'd have already done it, right? They control all the places where the riots are taking place.
What do you make of this? I didn't put this on the list, but it was something that I had seen and I didn't read into the story. I saw a report that Biden's former stenographer said he's not the same that he was years ago. That goes to the mental acuity type of a thing like that. I don't know. I mean, you see a story like that, and that could be slightly damaging to Biden. He's been people have been attacking him or trying to criticize him for that, or try to question, I guess, put into play whether or not he is sharp or whatever. I mean, we're going to see a lot of this. We'll get a better look at him starting with the debates
Right.
at the end of the month. But it'll be interesting. We'll see. Do you have any feeling about that?
Well, I think we talked about this before. I thought one of the most effective ads, and there's a blizzard of ads now that there's the internet, blizzard of political ads, right? The Trump team has done was where they show Biden speaking in like 2016, and then they show him speaking now. And it's a big difference in like how sharp and tough and alert he is in these speeches. I mean, you can really tell that this has been a bad 4 years for him, that he's gone down a pretty good bit. Speaking
of advertising, I heard something the other day that I thought was kind of interesting, and this is maybe it's more into the, but you remember, I mean, his campaign was very effective using Facebook and those platforms 4 years ago. Reports are that they basically have pulled back a lot of their Facebook, and they're pouring more money into YouTube advertising.
Right. Because it's not you put up whatever you want. It's not, you don't get these little fact checks and all that kind of stuff.
And people unfettered. Yeah, and I mean, if you do short videos and you do them well, people will watch those things. I mean, YouTube is, they control that market, next to something like TikTok, but TikTok's like 15 seconds or something like that.
Yeah.
But you can put off a good polished ad. That it also doesn't have, right, I think, like you said, I think that's part of the key. It doesn't quite have the same overlords, with this.
I can also tell you that people our age have no idea how much kids use YouTube, right? They use it completely differently. Like, I decide I want to hear some Eric Clapton guitar, right? So I go punch in Eric Clapton and listen to him play some, 3 or 4 songs of him playing guitar, right? My daughter has, podcasts and all kinds of ongoing shows and dramas and stuff she's following all through YouTube, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, YouTube has a lot of viewers, and they couple of years ago, they formed YouTube TV as an alternative to cable, and they apparently are doing fairly well with that. So there's still a lot out there. So there's a lot of things out there for people, whether or not they're either self-produced television shows, mm-hmm. or they're just a lot of instructional things that people have got huge fan bases, where they earn their living by putting
right.
out these videos and stuff.
Commentary
like
things and
yeah.
Comedy and all kinds of stuff that it's a big thing. It's not fail safe. It's owned by Google. So.
Right. Well, this brings me to another thing that I didn't put on our show list, but I did want to get your input about this. I saw a comment within the last week about Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg saying that, he is the most powerful person in politics. Do you agree with that?
That Zuckerberg is?
Yeah.
They have some power. I mean, I don't know. You can sit down and say who's the most powerful. There's enough of these things along that line now to where if he, decided he wasn't going to let Republican voices be heard or whatever, it'd get canceled, right? People would go somewhere else, and it would be, the new thing would be up and running by this time tomorrow. So, and that he's not as indispensable as he may have been even, 6 months or a year ago. But yeah, a lot of people get a lot of their views from Facebook. There's vigorous political discussion on Facebook every day, so, there's not nothing to what he says. I don't know if I would rank him as the most powerful person in politics.
Well, I mean, I think Facebook, I don't know that Facebook, when it started, I don't think that was something that was necessarily on the radar of Zuckerberg or whatever, that they were going to become this big political force and play such a role in politics. But once it became obvious that they were going to be playing a bigger role, they definitely took on that role. And we saw, like we just talked about, how much money. I mean, the Obama campaign poured in lots of money. The Trump campaign had poured in lots of money, to Facebook. They definitely controlled a lot of the narrative. I mean, Facebook, and then they've taken a lot of flack. I mean, Facebook is basically cutting off, political advertising more or less on like October 27th or something like that, or limiting the. I really don't think that's much of anything.
Yeah, I don't think I'll miss that.
Yeah, but they're still gonna, they're a cash cow. I mean, they're making money. I kick myself in the head all the time thinking about, I should have just bought, 500 shares when it came out at 20. I mean, it sunk to 10. I should have bought even more when it sunk. I should have bought some, because the stock is selling for $273 a share. Unbelievable. Wow. What it has done since it launched. So, I have to give, despite all the criticism of Zuckerberg and all these guys, my hat goes off to what he created, and he's created an enormous amount of wealth for himself, his employees, and investors. So you got to give him some credit for that. All right, now there's the other thing I want to ask you about here too is this. It kind of surprised me, to be honest, where the Senate has now come back with a new relief bill, but at only roughly $500 billion. Before all the adjournment, they were at like $1 trillion.
Right.
And
that was the low version.
That was their low version. I mean, Nancy Pelosi was looking for, she says, it's got to be like 2 or 2.2 trillion. And Mitch McConnell was at 1 trillion, and with all that. But here, I don't know. I mean, what do you think about this? The Senate comes back with even less than they did before. I mean,
well, they're also seeking to reprogram a lot of money that was appropriated earlier that hasn't been used. So it's actually bigger than it looks like. It's $500 billion in new spending, but there's a lot of just reprogramming spending to things that need it. They want to extend the PPP, which I think is a good idea. They want to give $300 a week, $300 cash payment instead of the $600 cash payment that they gave earlier. I think that's an effort to get Republican senators on board, because giving the $600, they had a lot of people who didn't go back to work when their businesses reopened because they were making more money sitting at home. So I think that they had to address that to get start to get it over the table. I think that he must have a majority of the caucus now, of the Republican caucus, or he wouldn't bring it to the floor. He kind of observes the Hastert rule, to that extent. But it'll be close. It may not pass. It's not a huge thing. It's kind of far from what the Democrat hit some key things like liability reform that are kind of essential for getting us reopened. And it's focused, unlike the Democrat bill, which is, make it comfortable to sit home a few more months. This is focused on things that would help us reopen, right? It's oriented toward reopening. So, I don't know if it'll get out of the Senate. If it does, it definitely won't get out of the House.
Just in your opinion, how crucial is it to get something passed at all? I mean, at this point.
I think it was crucial, a lot more crucial a month ago. At this point, people are counting on little or nothing happening anyway.
Yeah, this is what I think is interesting. It's just, I mean, we've had a tech sell-off in the stock market the last few days, but it's bouncing back a little bit today. It's something that was needed for a long time. But there are a lot of times with the stock market, there are things like this that are kind of baked into the cake, where they're expecting more money to come into the system for the taxpayers and things like this. But now it looks like 50-50 maybe or less. But I don't see the market or anybody really reacting negatively to this. Part of it may be that because employment numbers have continued to get a little bit better and better and better, that they're looking and they're saying like, well, the economy's not great, but we're not where we were 3 months ago. So
Right.
how much of this do we need?
It's also time for folks on our side to start looking at what was projected and what is actually happening with regard to the economy, because the economy is way ahead of schedule. The Democrat economists were saying unemployment would be over 10% well into next year. It's already down to 8.4 and falling rapidly as things reopen.
Yeah, I mean, I would be surprised to see it drop a whole lot more between now, between this last month before this last report before the election, because I think things have kind of plateaued a little bit. But still, that's a far better number than they expected it to be. And this is where it always gets me. Biden's out here complaining. He's criticizing the president. He had the longest expansion in economic history, and he's destroyed it. But without any context of what happened. Things
and
are
slowest too, the worst, weakest expansion in economic history, weakest recovery ever.
Yeah, and so things are getting back on track. I don't really think that plays. I don't think that really holds a lot of water, in my opinion.
No, I don't think he's getting a lot of traction with it.
Yeah. All right, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. The president was nominated this morning or yesterday, I believe, for a Nobel Peace Prize for brokering the Israel UAE deal. Adding to his case is now the Kosovo Bosnia deal, which that was an issue that bedeviled Bill Clinton, right? Remember, that was Bill Clinton's wag the dog thing, right? So, you're talking about, a war that started during the Bill Clinton administration finally being ended by President Trump. He's done some remarkable things with diplomacy. Also, I have to admit that I was not all that wild about Jared Kushner for a long time, but the longer this goes on, the harder it is to argue that he's one of the most capable public servants of our generation. This and the Middle East peace deal, they're real feathers in his cap.
Yeah, no, it was interesting too, because I noticed, I saw that on Fox News this morning, and so it was a Norwegian legislator, but one of the first media reports I saw this from non-Fox News source was, anti-immigrant lawyer nominates Trump for the 2021 Nobel Peace Prize. And I thought, you just can't swallow this at all. You just got to find a way to do this. Unbelievable. So my final parting thought would just be, college football seems to be back slowly but surely. I didn't go to Brigham Young University, BYU, but they played Navy the other night, totally annihilated them.
Yeah, they were impressive.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know where this college season is going to look, but it's going to be a little strange. But there's a lot of pressure on that Big Ten again to come and play.
And
so
the Pac-12.
So we still may see something develop here, but the kids have got to play. I mean, I think that part of the Big Ten argument too I saw today was just that the critics were just saying, look, it's like this is going to cost these players a lot of money. Their marketability goes way down if they can't be on the field and show the scouts and everything what they can do.
That's right. And the towns and the schools and the other athletic programs in the schools. And, there's a lot of victims here for nothing. I mean, you think about it. Last year, we asked these people to go out and risk, broken necks, CTE, all that stuff every play, right? But this year, there's a thing that, that 99.999% people will live through, but you can't play. You can't have a season.
Yeah. All right. That's the end of our show. Thanks a lot for everybody for joining us. Please, as always, be safe and be well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. Never, ever, ever. And God bless America. And we'll see you again next week. right button.
All right.
I just have this recording.